much blood put out per beat.
Exactly. So both those combined is Q, which is cardiac output. So you only have, now, so Q, cardiac output is stroke volume times heart rate, right? So those are the, now you have other factors that influence stroke volume. Now what stroke volume, how would you define stroke volume in your own words? What is stroke volume? It's the amount of blood per beat, right?
Yeah.
So how can you increase, if you just keep the heart rate constant, how can you increase the amount of blood coming out from the heart? If you keep the heart rate is just 30 beats per minute, 50 beats per minute, 70 beats per minute is normal, right?
You
50 to 100.
Increasing
because
the amount of blood.
Yes, that's a good one. You can definitely increase the amount of blood. What else can you do? That's coming in, right? What's that called?
Right.
Stuff
Yeah.
coming in.
The decrease the compliance, like the pressure,
We'll get there in a second. What's the word for the stuff coming in?
Filling.
Filling or preload, right?
Preload.
Preload.
Okay.
Right? So if you increase preload, you can increase stroke volume, right? The reason I'm going through this is these are easy points. I mean, I can ask you a simple question. Which of the following factors increase stroke volume? A, preload. B, and give you 4 choices, and you should be able to work this out in your head. There's no formula, there's nothing. This is just a theoretical type question.
Right.
Just to see if you understand what these are. That's why I'm trying to go through them. You really need to understand that. So cardiac output, heart rate, stroke volume. So let's leave heart rate alone for a second. Stroke volume, we said we can increase by bringing more blood back, which is preload. What else can we do? There's one more thing you can do to increase the blood coming out of the heart. That's contractility, right? Make the heart pump a little bit harder.
So I guess I'm confused. I thought that's what stroke volume was.
Stroke volume is the amount. Stroke volume by definition is only the amount of blood coming out of the heart in one beat.
For a single beat, okay.
For a single beat.
Got it.
It doesn't mean it's the max. Like right now my heart is beating, let's say 70 beats per minute. Is it putting out the most amount of blood that it can come out?
No.
No, it's not. It's beating at 70 beats a minute, it's putting out a normal stroke volume.
Okay. Got it.
Right?
Yes.
It's not putting out maximum stroke volume because I'm not stressed. I'm not,
Running
I'm not running, I'm not
so,
being chased by something.
So what was that? What's that called when it means harder that you're just talking about?
Contractility.
That's contractility.
Right. Strength of contraction. Contractility. So if somebody says a way to describe the heart beating harder is contractility. We're not even talking about heart rate. I'm still 70 beats a minute. I'm not changing the 70 beats a minute. But the heart can actually beat a little bit harder. In other words, what that means is the muscle can contract more forcefully, which will expel more of the blood out. Because normally when the heart contracts, you have stroke volume, right? But you always have a little bit of blood left over.
Right.
It's not 100%. It's not, everything is not being out. But when you increase contractility, more is coming out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay, so contractility and preload are 2 ways you can increase stroke volume. Heart rate is pretty straightforward. You can increase heart rate, you can decrease heart rate. Okay, so what the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system plays a part in that. All you're doing is increasing the number of beats. So see how so the whole thing, so the formula is
via the sympathetic, right? You can increase mainly sympathetic.
Decrease is
Parasympathetic.
and we'll talk about that in just a second. About an eraser. But that's an important formula you need to understand.
Because he said we need a
Do you
calculator.
have any dry erase markers?
I have markers, but I don't have the.
I can go downstairs and go get some.
One. We'll just make do with this one.
Go rent some downstairs.
I have a tissue.
I've got an eraser. I
Okay.
came prepared. Okay, so Q. I'm just gonna leave notes on here. What's Q?
Cardiac output.
Yeah.
What are the 2 factors?
Heart rate and stroke volume.
Right? How can I increase stroke volume? How can I
preload?
Preload, right?
And the one we just talked about.
Blood volume.
Contractility.
Right. So preload is blood volume, right?
Yes.
Basically, I'm bringing more into the heart or contractility. I can make the heart beat faster, right?
Mhm.
So if there was a multiple choice question and it said, which of the factors affect stroke volume? I mean, cardiac output. And A, heart rate. B, stroke volume. C, contractility. D, resting heart volume, or some weird verbiage. It's obviously not that. These are the factors that affect heart rate. Right? These are the things, this is how you can make the heart put out more blood.
But you said that question, what if it didn't or did?
Which one did not?
Oh, okay.
Or which one did could be. If it's which one did, you're looking for one answer,
Uh-huh.
obviously. So I have to give you 3 wrong. He has to give you
Right.
3 wrong answers and only 1 right answer.
Right.
This question to me would be easier if I asked you which one did not. Because I know heart rate increases cardiac output. I know stroke volume increases cardiac output. So if I said which of the following does not increase cardiac output, A, heart rate, well, it does. B, stroke volume.
It does.
C, contractility. D, the parasympathetic nervous system.
No,
Here.
decreases.
Right, parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because you're going to slow things down. Because what is the parasympathetic going to do to the heart rate? It's going to decrease it. Because we're talking about control of the heart here. So, does that make sense? That's why that formula is so important to understand in your head. It's not just a formula to memorize and say Q is HR times SV. Well, what does that mean, right? Cardiac output, heart rate, stroke volume. So, you know what cardiac output is now? Well, you already knew it. So, what's the normal cardiac output?
5
Average.
liters.
5 liters
Per
a
minute.
minute. Okay? It changes, right?
Yes.
Obviously. So, you're exercising, it can go up. In fact, it can go up to 15. Well, how do you think it goes up to 15? What changes? Heart rate, stroke volume, reload, contractility. That's how it goes to 15.
Mhm.
Those are the factors that change to get it from 5 to 15. Okay, now you can control the heart. So what is, he says normal is 70 beats a minute. Higher in children. Let's see. Okay, now let's talk about, now when you talk about control, there's intrinsic control. What is intrinsic control? Remember what we had talked about before, where if you fill the heart with blood, what happens to the heart? It stretches, right?
Yes.
That stretch is going to make it contract a little bit harder. Not the maximum. It's just going to increase contractility, but not to the maximum potential. It's just going to increase a little bit.
Mhm.
But so that's an intrinsic. In other words, you don't need the nervous system to make any changes to the heart to make it control. That's why it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic to the heart. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So your nervous system doesn't have to tell the heart, hey, contract harder. If the heart fills a little bit more, it's going to contract a little bit harder. Not the maximum, but it is going to contract harder. That's what he calls intrinsic. And he's calling that atrial stretch or distension. And then he goes on to tell you how it does that. So when the heart stretches, remember that SA node was the pacemaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is on the top of the heart in the atrium. Well, that's also going to stretch because it's part of the heart. Because remember, what's stretching when the heart fills? Is it the ventricles or the atrium?
Atrium.
Atrium is stretching. Where's the SA node?
On top of the
Yeah, it's
atrium.
on top.
It's by the atrium, right? So if the atrium stretches, what happens to the SA node? It's also stretching.
That makes sense.
So when it stretches, and that's what he's saying. He's saying stretch of the SA node pacemaker cells increase excitability. So when the atrium fills, it stretches, the SA node's right there. So the placement of the SA node works out perfect. You can increase. That's intrinsic regulation. Okay. Okay, then temperature, increase in temperature increases heart rate. Now we're not talking about ambient temperature, body temperature,
Right.
obviously. Okay, so you walk into a hot room, your heart just doesn't start racing uncontrollably. It's your body temperature. So if you're running a fever, your heart rate will be up a little bit. So that's what he's talking about, temperature. I know it sounds stupid when I say ambient temperature, but it's easy to get them confused. That's why I'm pointing it out. Don't think that you walk in a hot room and your heart rate goes up. Not necessarily, because you have homeostasis, remember, the whole balance concept. So if you're running a fever now, certainly your heart rate is going to be up a little bit. That's what he's talking about.
So you can put room temperature,